Hello, hello. I'm old and gray. You didn't come on here to hear me sing, did you? What's up? What's up? It's 7 o'clock on the East Coast, Tuesday, February 21st. As always, we like to give an opportunity for people to come in, get situated, grab a seat, have a drink, light snacks on the bar. So if you're just joining us, say hi. Let me know you're here. Hi, Carol and Jenna. How are you? Um, oh, and we should. Oh, somebody wanted to ask. We'll see if she comes on. I remember who it was. Last time we had a community conversations. Hey, Matt. Somebody wanted to come up with the initial question. So maybe we'll give it a minute before I throw something out and see if they pop on and we can let them ask the question. Hi, Sienna. So yeah, if you're just joining us, say hi. If you for first time, let us know where you're from. Um, And we usually get started just a couple minutes past the hour, let people get the notification, get settled in, drop everything and come here, whatever you're doing. Hey, man, I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty good. Um, oh, hey, Joe. Good to see you again. I'm doing pretty good, I think. A little stressful, but I think life is that way these days. Hello, Dr. Aurelius. Um, but overall, I can't complain. And what little complaining I may do here, we just don't know. Hi, D Dog too. Love that name. Um, Eric B in the house. Eric, I had a thought that maybe we should go on a national tour of trivia all over the country. We'll get it sponsored, and we'll just win it. Just win, and maybe we can make a living. I'll pitch it to you later, but just tossing it out there. Um, Wow, questions out of the gate. All right. Well, on that note, if you're just joining us, welcome. Thank you for being here. Feel free to let me know you're here. Say hi. If you're new, let me know where you're from. Let me just get through some initial housekeeping, and then we'll. Oh, there's a cat in the room. I usually lock them out because they cause pure havoc, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, let me get through some initial housekeeping and we'll just jump right into questions. So, my name is Ethan. I'm a national advocate for the International OCD Foundation, which simply means I have OCD and I won't stop talking about it. This community conversation is intended to serve as educational content. It's not intended to replace therapy. For treatment related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The IOCDF is not a crisis hotline. So if you're in a crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room, call 911 or 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can do that by dialing 988. Also, we want to create a safe space and be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. And note, this broadcast is on several social media platforms and it's being recorded. So keep that in mind as we share. Oh, Jess is in the house. Hey, Jess. How are you, dear friend? And Bonnie from Sherman Oaks, my old haunting grounds, when I was a ghost, my old stomping grounds. All right. Well, instead of getting behind on questions, I always like to throw subjects out, but I'll just start answering questions and we'll jump right into it. But glad everyone is here. As you think of things, pop in. We're here to support one another. And so let's just dive in real quick. Joe at 7:01 p.m., code name Eileen, asks, Ethan, do you feel like you totally conquered OCD? It's a great question. So the short answer is no. But there is a long answer. So the long answer is that OCD is not curable. It's as of yet, we don't, who knows, but as of yet, it's not curable. It's a chronic illness like diabetes or MS. With that being said, though, you can reach a state of maintenance and management to where OCD isn't interfering with your functioning or interfering very little. So, and everybody reaches a different place in their own journey. And so I can only speak from my own OCD journey. I think at times I feel or felt OCD free. And at times it feels very intense and very real. And like, I'm back at the starting line. I don't mean from a relapse perspective. I just mean from the intensity of the thoughts and how loud they're screaming at me. So, I would say having come from a place of being completely bedridden and unable to function and it consuming tons and tons of hours in my day. And even before I was at my worst, it literally consuming tons and tons of hours of my day, I feel like I conquered OCD. If we meet it in the literal, like, I don't notice OCD, I don't ever have it, I never compulse, I never obsess, I don't have any intrusive thoughts. That's definitely not the case. I definitely have intrusive thoughts. I definitely do compulse. But it's so important to realize, number one, that what I can say is that the OCD very rarely impacts my decision making and functioning. So that isn't to say that I don't compulse. That isn't to say that I make a choice that is always value driven. But for the most part, I would say easily 80 to 90% of my choices throughout the day are value driven and not dictated by OCD, even if I'm having the thoughts, right? Now, there are some days and weeks where I won't have any OCD thoughts. It's very, very quiet. And other days and weeks and months where it can be very, very loud. Um, and then there's the other component of OCD, which are the compulsions. And, some days and weeks, I'll have very few compulsions, if any. And other times when OCD is very loud and maybe there's other stressors on my plate, I will engage in compulsions. So, you know, the short answer of it is no. And I think all of us advocates are always very open and honest about where we are with our own OCD journeys. And I've spoken very openly and candidly in these community conversations about where I am right now. OCD is pretty quiet for me. It's not really interfering with a whole lot. I noticed some thoughts here and there. But if you were around when Katie got COVID and we came back from Disney, OCD was really freaking loud. But usually I trust that when I'm stressed, either good or bad, and my OCD spikes, it will return to what I call baseline, sort of my normal function operating OCD. And if I compare that to where I was before, this is the closest thing to a cure. I'll take it because, I'm doing everything I want to do in life. I'm not hindered by OCD. And I vehemently believe that everyone can get to this place. I really, really do, which is why I consistently advocate and try to remain as open and honest as I possibly can. So it's a great question. And so the short answer is no, but the long answer is, if conquering is being able to function and live life, then yeah, I conquered that bitch. Sorry, excuse it. I just had to go there, but hopefully that makes sense based on the way I just explained it. Adelaide, Australia in the house. That's awesome, Sienna. Well, hope tomorrow is going well. Hi, Valencia. It's good to see your face. Picture. Determinate negation at 7:02 p.m. Hey, New Haven, Connecticut. Welcome, New Haven. Is it normal to have verbal tics associated with compulsive thoughts? Well, it's a great question. And I don't know if it's normal to have verbal, I'm assuming you mean outward tics associated with compulsive thoughts. So there are a lot of related morbidities and related disorders. Tourette's can be one of them, or just verbal or physical tics. Whether they're directly associated with your compulsive thoughts or directly a result of compulsive thoughts, I'm not sure. And I would say that you'd probably need to be assessed to determine the exact cause of your verbal tics. Obviously, stress can bring them on. Anxiety can bring them on. I have friends, and even when I'm really stressed and kind of wrapped up in OCD, I'll clear my nostrils a lot. I'll kind of do this or do this with my nose. So it's very common for tics and skin picking and hair pulling and sort of the body focused repetitive behaviors to be present when OCD is also present and prevalent. So, but the reason in your case, I think, would be best determined. I'm not a doctor, but even if I were, I would say go get it. But it is most likely, many cases I have seen where there have been either physical or verbal tics in conjunction with OCD, but whether one causes the other just depends on the individual. Great question, though. Thank you for asking. Laura at 7:02 p.m. Hi, Ethan. My whole family likes to judge my mental health and mental illness, severe OCD. Why is that? That's a great question. And I think mental illness and OCD and a variety of mental illnesses are often judged by people, both family, friends, and the general public. I can't speak to your specific family's purpose, why they may or may not, judge, but I can tell you that a lot of individuals, a lot of people judge mental illness because they don't understand it. It's a lack of education. I would hope that in your family's case, it really is not about being mean, but simply misunderstanding. People, tend to think that OCD specifically is a quirk or a trait, something we can just stop doing or quit. It's a decision, not a disorder or disease. And when you operate under that assumption, it's very easy to kind of um, just kind of throw caution to the wind with it and just kind of ignore it and be like, oh, you need to stop that. That's ridiculous. You can just, whatever your family may say to you. And I'm sure lots of folks can probably relate in the chat. So for whatever reason, people are judgy around OCD. Most of the time, it's because of lack of information, lack of understanding, and the perpetuation of myths and stigma by the media and mainstream culture in general about OCD. So then the next question becomes, well, how do we, educate? So I like to call it compassionate education. Um, and so I would start, and maybe you've done this, Laura, and please feel free to comment and let me know. But in many cases, you can start by presenting an article or a video of maybe a celebrity or someone that they may pay attention to, and or simply navigate to the IOCDF website and show them that it is a disorder and a disease, and it's a real illness. And we can always make recommendations of good articles or videos to maybe show your family. So I think the first step is compassionate education, and sit down and say, hey, I know how you feel. I understand that. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe just read this article and then let me know what you think. Start small, start there, and kind of build up. But, while I can't speak specifically to you why your family behaves in that way, I would say the majority of the time it's just lack of understanding. Sometimes it can be combined with religious or faith beliefs, which again is still lack of understanding. So yeah, hopefully that helped answer your question, Lauren. Thank you for that. My mother says I look handsome. Thank you, Mom. I'll take it. I'll take it anyway, I can get it. Eileen wrote, I actually looked up the article about OCD. They say about 30% people with OCD have verbal tics. Well, there you go. Google, but that's it. That's your only time you can Google it. Just that once, not again. Oh, and Eric B wrote, I have verbal tics, Eileen, and often goes along with just right obsessions. So there you go, Eric B. Words. Yes, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, words have been hard today. On days where I didn't sleep well last night, and so please pardon my refurbishment, my dust, my lack of verbal acuity. Now I'm coming up with words. Yeah, I can't speak, but acuity comes to mind. Good, Ethan. Joe asks, I know it's hard not to compulse, but I want to get to the point where I don't compulse at all. How do I do that? That's Eileen at 7:09 p.m. Great question. So, all right, let's break this down a little bit. And also, Joe and anybody else, we had an amazing town hall on ERP a couple weeks ago. I don't know, Amanda, if you can hunt down the link and maybe post the live stream. Ignore the cats in the background. But if you want to know, learn how to resist compulsion and kind of break down what the gold standard treatment is for OCD, you definitely want to check that out. It was a really, really, really good conversation. I think we all want to get to the point where we don't compulse, and many of us also want to get to the point where we don't obsess and don't have the intrusive thoughts. So the way this breaks down, as simply as I can say, is there's thoughts and feelings, and then focus and behavior. So those are kind of the four things that we look at, right? Thoughts are involuntary. So we can focus our thoughts. I'm talking about what I'm talking about right now, but I can also, if I paid attention, I was like, there's all these other thoughts flying through my head right now, right? So can't control those. And we can't control my feelings. I feel a number of different ways right now. And, that's just the way I feel. And I have to be okay with that. But then where we move into control is our focus. So what we choose to pay attention to, and then our behavior, which is how we respond to what we pay attention to, right? And so to get to a place where you're compulsing less and less and less is really a response choice. And if you're struggling with OCD and in the heat of it, when you compulse, it very much feels like I have to, I can't help it. I have to compulse when those thoughts are really fused. meaning so close, and you just before you realize it, you're already in the midst of a compulsion. So it very much feels like you can't help it. As we break OCD down and start to navigate treatment and diffuse your thoughts, we start to realize that there are moments of choices. And it takes time to create that space. But this more space that's created, you start to learn that choosing to compulse is a choice. So when somebody says, I can't stop in regards to compulsions, I will always offer, well, you won't stop. It is a choice. But again, you have to have the information before you can make the change. So in no way, I totally understand how it doesn't feel like a choice for sure. Once you recognize it's a choice, it then becomes a matter of, well, how do I respond to the obsessive thought or the feeling that creates the compulsion? And then why am I responding that way? So sitting with the discomfort, moving toward your values, being willing to let the scary thing happen, be there, whatever it is, and going through those, and that constant practicing of response prevention, right? I'm preventing responding in a compulsive way over time starts to mitigate and chip away at the compulsions as your compulsions get smaller and smaller. What's cool is as you start to do less compulsions, you'll have less obsessions because they feed each other. The more you compulse, the more you feed the monster, the more you'll obsess, because you're basically telling the obsession that I believe you and I'm going to do these things to prevent whatever you're screaming at me about. So, this is all through the gold standard treatment of exposure and response prevention. There are other treatments as well. I'm not saying that their ERP is the only one, but that's at least the first one you'd want to try. And through constant practice of that, compulsions will become less and less and less and less. So the exciting thing is, compulsions are a choice. I think that's exciting because that puts the control in your hands, and we have so little control over so many things. I find a lot of hope, and I find a lot of reassurance in the fact that I can control whether I compulse or not. Obsessive thoughts, not so much. But I think that the relapse of OCD doesn't come with the obsessions; it comes with the compulsions, and the large amounts of obsessions come with large amounts of compulsion. So you don't engage in the compulsions, the obsessions quiet down, the feelings quiet down, and things get better. You might talk to somebody with OCD that said they've stopped compulsing completely. They've never have OCD thoughts anymore. And that's amazing. That's not me and most of the people I know. But you can get to a pretty phenomenal place where you're really living out the life that you want to live in accordance with your values and things that are meaningful to you, and where compulsions take up seconds of your day instead of hours. So hopefully that answered your question. Eric B, perfectionism go haywire. It's hard to just let go and feel the burn, especially when OCD tells me I'm trying to do the right thing. Any thoughts? Yeah, Eric, I'm going to take a drink first. So yeah, definitely some thoughts. I think that perfectionism is tricky, but especially when it attaches to things that are meaningful, if it's work related or significant other related, or something that you genuinely want to go perfect. And then you can make the argument, well, if it's not perfect, I could lose my job, or I could lose my person, or whatever it is, right? So obviously, OCD attacks the things that are most valuable to us. And so, you're going to have most likely perfectionism around things that you value greatly. The question then becomes, how much is that perfectionism taking you away from your values? How much of that perfectionism is preventing you from engaging with X job, person, whatever it is, in a meaningful way, right? So I'm going to make a weird correlation, but alcoholism. Can you have a drink and then be done? Meaning, can you go back once and fix it and then be done, or do you need to keep going, right? And if you need to keep going, well, then if we look at the model of alcoholism, then you probably can't drink. The benefit of that is you get your life back, right? You actually get to experience versus keep drinking. And so the short answer for perfectionism, at least for me, is that yes, if there's a mistake in your email, if there's a mistake in your message or your paper or your work or your accounting or whatever it is, you may very well, get written up, lose your job, blah, 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 whatever, catastrophic thinking comes to mind. However, If we continue to engage in perfectionistic behavior and continue to compulse in a way to make sure that everything is perfect, you'll most likely end up losing those things anyway, because you're going to be spending all of your time making sure that something is perfect and not getting the rest of your work done, or not spending the time with the person, or not finishing what you need to finish on time, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I always say that, the only guarantee that we have is that, if we engage in compulsions, that our OCD will get worse, right? That is certain. And for me, perfectionism goes the same way, right? We can only do the best we can. At a certain point, we have to be willing to let go and recognize that it is what it is. I did the best I can. And there are times when my perfectionism is picked up or kicked up quite a bit. Well, I'll purposely won't reread an email. I'll send it knowing there's typos, and things like that. Obviously, when there's, made contracts and major things that, I'll reread it a few times. But I think OCD will never be satisfied. So we have to get to a place where, we're willing to let there be mistakes. And if somebody has a question about it or wants to bring it up, then they can bring it up with you, and you should trust that you can handle it and manage it, right? So that's my 10 cents on perfectionism. Really, in anything, is how much of it is eating your day or eating your time, and is it worth a possible mistake in an effort to get more of your life back? Sienna wrote, I often find that OCD is a symptom of something else. I had OCD start in puberty and then late diagnosed ADHD. It may be. Research has shown that you can have you do have a genetic predisposition to it. When it manifests depends on a number of things. It can manifest at birth, like in my case. It can manifest at certain times, certain milestones, puberty, going to college, going to high school, having a baby, prenatal, postpartum, so forth and so on. And trauma can induce it, but generally there's a predisposition to it already, a genetic predisposition, a biological predisposition, and then something may occur that triggers it. So that's from Dr. Smith, ladies and gentlemen. I have no doctor, but I'm just saying. But I will add, the late diagnosis is not uncommon. It can take 14 to 17 years to get diagnosed and treated properly. And so, I'm sure as you learn, Sienna, about your OCD, you could track back probably compulsions that you were doing. As you said, OCD started in puberty and, way beyond that. Whether I don't think there's a correlation between OCD and ADHD. In other words, I don't. It's a common comorbidity that a lot of people with OCD have ADHD and vice versa. I don't think that ADHD, though, is a cause of OCD, if that makes sense. OCD is not a symptom in any way. It's its own disorder and separate from that. But thank you. Let's see here. Good questions. Thank you so much. Joe asks at 7:12 p.m. Eileen, I heard something about sneaky compulsions. I have a lot of sneaky little compulsions where I'm compiling and don't even realize it. How can I cure that? All right. So the first thing we want to do is let go of the word cure, right? We're gonna take on this idea of exist, coexist with, or sit with, or let it be there, right? So the first thing we have to do is come to peace with the fact that this is a chronic illness. I don't shy away from that. People don't want to hear that. People don't like to hear that. A lot of people don't. I shouldn't say all people. Well, I didn't say all people. Regardless, what I always use the example of diabetes or MS. I have friends with both, and they live amazing lives. And every once in a while, they're doing everything right. It will pop up. It will cause them, issues. They will deal with it and be back, going their regular thing. And OCD very much reacts that same way. You can be doing everything right, and OCD can get loud and interfere, and then kind of dissipate again. So we definitely want to look at like living in this place of management and maintenance, right, where OCD is not impacting your life for the most part. You may notice some thoughts here and there, so forth and so on. So, I haven't heard the term sneaky compulsions, but I like it. I usually call them like micro compulsions or micro avoidances, things that you don't know that you're doing, but you suddenly realize you're doing. There's also things you're doing that you realize you're doing, but they feel so small. They feel that they're not, not important or not big enough to make an impact. So, a couple things. I think as we engage in treatment and therapy, you'll begin to notice sneaky compulsions. I really like that. I'm totally taking that, Joe. you'll begin to notice sneaking compulsions and be able to um, not engage in them as you pay attention to them. But really takes mindfulness, awareness, and a lot of practice, right? A lot of treatment to be able to acknowledge those things. I do want to speak quickly on micro compulsions and micro avoidances. It's very easy to do those because they seem very they'll have little impact on it. So for instance, if you have some big compulsions but maybe a small compulsion is you take a paper towel to open the door in the bathroom, right, when you just washed your hands, or perhaps you slightly adjust something, and it's not a big deal. But these micro compulsions can build over time, and you can be doing a number of them and not realizing it, or maybe you realize it but don't think, again, it's an issue. But over time, micro avoidances and micro compulsions can grow and become an issue. I think a good analogy, as I think of analogies, I'm known as the analogy guy, would be, when you auto pay, you sign up for things, and they renew once a month, and like the first or second one, you're like, oh shoot, I'm spending $6 a month, and I didn't realize that, right? But what happens when you keep signing up and kind of not paying attention? 9 months in, you look and you're spending 100, 200 a month, and you're like, oh my, it adds up, right? So it's the same for this. So we kind of want to nip it in the bud. Those are really low hanging fruit and easy things to maybe be aware of and stop yourself from doing. And it makes a big difference. It makes a big impact in the OCD, kind of shuts it down. Matt B wrote to Laura, I showed articles and videos to my family and it really helped them understand. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you, Amanda, at 7:14 p.m. for posting the town hall for ERP. Yeah, if you're just joining me, it was a wonderful town hall with myself, Chris Tronston, Liz McInville, and Katie, all about ERP 101. So I highly recommend you check it out. A lot of good questions. Joe, I see your continued questions. I'm going to keep going. And then if there are no other questions, I'll pop back over to you. Sorry, long post. You didn't see the first part, Ethan. The situation is a death in the family. Me trying to be helpful. Your answer still applies, though. Thanks. Oh, did I miss? I'm sorry, Eric. Did I miss your first about perfectionism? Yes. Hi, Ethan. I had a death in my extended family last week. I've asked several times if I can help with anything, and they keep thanking me but saying no, which makes me hyper responsibility, and perfectionism goes haywire. Gotcha. So yeah. Okay. Sorry, I missed that, Eric. And thank you for pointing that out. So as it relates to your specific situation, I think that at a certain point we just have to take people at face value. I know that it feels uncomfortable. It feels like dropping the rope is difficult, knowing, and I think that there are certain things you can do that you don't necessarily need permission to do. If you want to send a meal or send flowers or make a donation, that might be beneficial. But beyond that, I think you offering to be there for people is amazing. And, if they've got it covered and then I know it's uncomfortable to kind of let it go. But I think we just have to notice those perfectionistic thoughts, let them be there, take people at face value, know that you're respecting what they want by listening to them rather than doing what you feel, and kind of taking it from there. And you can always reapproach in a couple of weeks and say, hey, I'm still here. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. So yes, what I said still applies, and I'm sorry for the loss in your family. And you wrote the compulsion here would probably be checking and me asking if I can help to the point where it's unhelpful. I mean, that's the other thing, right? Is that just like with all compulsions, especially reassurance seeking behaviors, people get annoyed, and we keep asking, and we definitely want to make room, and we kind of create the thing that we are afraid of, right? Are you mad at me? Oh, no, I'm fine. Are you sure you're not mad at me? We're good. 10 minutes later. Okay, I just have to ask one more time. You swear we're all good? Okay, by that time, they're mad at you because you've texted them 12 times asking if they're mad at you, right? OCD is so good at creating the reality that you don't want, that you're afraid of, and all of the above, right? So you wanting to help multiple times suddenly becomes unhelpful. So I think it's also good to sit in the perspective of the other people and recognize that if you were in that position and somebody offered to help and you said not right now, to respect those boundaries. And it can feel uncomfortable, and I know you're coming from a really, really good place, but to your point, which you just acknowledged, at a certain point, asking multiple times definitely starts to disrespect their space. And I'm not trying to trigger you, Erica, but I think your insight is spot on. It becomes unhelpful. So I think that we just have to sit with our own discomfort around where they are at that time and not wanting your help. And you can always reapproach it down the road for sure. Matt B, stick with the ick, quoting my fiance Katie. We like that. I think you owe her now 35 cents. Just kidding. Ken Baker, hello. Can it be confused with PTSD or schizophrenia? I don't quite understand your question, Ken. Can it, meaning OCD, be confused with PTSD or schizophrenia? Ken, if you want to elaborate down below, please feel free. Matt B, thank you. Thank you for the analogy cred. Every once in a while I get off, but I'm pretty good. I'll give myself credit just for analogies. Okay. Just hey, Beth Carducci, welcome. Ken wrote, I don't believe in exposure therapy. Well, I'd love to know your insight. I'd love to. This is an open forum and a conversation, and I'd love to, see why you don't. And although it is worth noting, and you may have meant this, Ken, that exposure therapy and exposure response prevention therapy are two different things. You may have meant ERP. But definitely interested into your perspective as to why you may feel that way. And it'll be a good opportunity to maybe talk about ERP in depth. And obviously respect your opinion and your beliefs. So not here to call you out. I just always like a good conversation, and that might be one. Not a whole lot of questions, and more questions right now. Although I will double back to Joe's question at the top. But anyway, please feel free to continue asking questions. Patricia asked, "Why does OCD feel so real to the point we doubt is OCD?" Preach, Patricia. This is what makes it such a vile and 7:29 p.m. Amanda. This is what makes OCD such, for lack of a better word, an asshole, right? I think that OCD can be so convincing, both in thoughts and feelings, that it can definitely make you doubt the OCD make you doubt the OCD itself, and make ignoring whatever the OCD is telling you feel completely irresponsible. As for the why, that's a great question. The why, I think, is just because that's the nature of OCD. That is OCD, right? Is to OCD sort of goes back to our lizard brains, where our brains are hardwired to survive. And if we hear a noise in the bush, is it a bird or is it a saber-toothed tiger? And back then, warning, danger, run away. And now, we're getting those same signals in our brains. However, there may not be anything in the bush, or it might just be a bird, right? There's no dinosaurs roaming around looking to kill us and eat us for food. Not to say that there isn't danger, but our brains are a little bit miswired in that way. And so, the brain in it feels real because the fear is real. Our brains determine fear naturally. That's what we're programmed to do, is to survive. And so that's where that comes on. The OCD preys on that. And it literally is a miswiring, where our limbic system and our prefrontal cortex just tend to think there's danger when there's not, right? So alarm goes off. And I think that's why potentially it feels so real, is that the OCD goes, oh my God, what if the feeling follows up, and all of that feels very, very real. And then our brains and our bodies react: anxiety, sweaty palms, heart palpitations, nausea, dizziness, right? But instead of the something dangerous lurking in the bushes, it's the OCD. Now, of course, the $1 million question is, well, what if there is something dangerous in the bushes, right? Because there could be. It's a possibility. And that's where this also becomes really tricky, right? Because a lot of OCD is grounded in reality. What if I get COVID? What if I have COVID and give it to an elderly person or somebody immunocompromised, and I get them sick, right? Those are all real things. So you can see me going down the rabbit hole here and validating, hopefully, some of the reasons why OCD feels so real and we doubt whether I have OCD, because and all of those things. I think ultimately what we have to ask ourselves is how much time and life is OCD stealing from you? And at that point, what risks are you willing to take, right? You take risks every day. If you get in a car and you drive, you take a risk. If you go outside in the rain in a lightning storm, you're taking a risk, right? We take tons and tons and tons and tons of risks that we ignore, or we're just willing to live with it. Every time you cross the street, you're taking a risk. Um, OCD just happens to pinpoint something that we're like, I'm not willing to risk that. And it becomes completely irrational. So we really have to determine how much of your life is being taken up by OCD and whether the risk is worth it. And that's why the accepting of uncertainty is really important, because sometimes the risk can be 0.0001%, but that's too much for some people. It was too much for me. Like mine was, what if I have a head injury and I die? I'm not going to take a chance for that, right? But if I'm living a life in which I am completely bedridden, protecting myself from what if I get a head injury, then, I'm living a dead man's life, in which case maybe it is worth taking that risk. So I've gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but you're definitely not alone in OCD feeling real and feeling so real that we even doubt we have OCD, and validating, these fears, but just some background and history into why our brains behave the way they do, and then how it interrelates to OCD and how OCD takes advantage of that and really turns it on its head and makes it really uncomfortable and frustrating and all that stuff. So great question, Patricia. D-Dog, hopefully won't mind if I read this out loud, but she was asking, I love this. I love our group because we're always so compassionate and looking to support others. But she wrote, Laura, are you okay? My entire family are the same as yours. They won't listen to me, won't talk to my shrink, and have said they are done with me. They called me a narcissist, which my shrink said I am not one. They have said they have read enough about OCD and that they know about it. I feel your pain. It had been a difficult 5 months for me without family. I'm so sorry to hear that, D-Dog. And that is, hopefully over time, family will come around. It can be very hard. And it is important for you to have a support system and people around you to understand what you're going through. It's not always a possibility to help your family or friends understand in a way that they can be compassionate towards you. No, you're not a narcissist. Definitely not. OCD can seem selfish because it's about us, protecting them, what we want. It is definitely not narcissism. And hopefully over time, someone can come around, or someone will come around. And as I don't know, D, if you're in any type of treatment or therapy, and same with Laura, but also as you engage in treatment, one thing I did was I had a very dear friend of mine, I should say a former dear friend, but I had a very dear friend of mine when I was at my worst that really stigmatized me. And I worked for her, and she really, really just, and at the time I didn't have a lot of information about OCD, so I didn't know that she was doing this. It just made me feel like I was a weak piece of crap that couldn't get my shit together. So when I finally found evidence-based treatment, I actually asked her to come to therapy with me. And so she could hear from a doctor that what I was experiencing was not a weakness. It wasn't narcissism. It wasn't me choosing to be this way. It was an actual mental illness. And so she came, and for an hour they told her all about me and what I was going through and all that stuff. And she still chose not to believe that it was a real thing. And and that's on her. And so I dissolved the friendship once I got better because it just wasn't worth my time. Now obviously family is a different thing, and I wish that story had a better ending. But the point of it is we can only do what we have control over. We can't control other people, how they feel, what they do, what they think. But we can educate to the best of our ability. And Laura, and if you haven't done some of those things, maybe they'll work. And D, I'm so sorry to hear that. And hopefully there are friends you can lean on. This community is amazing. There's support groups, and like I said, over time, also as you learn more about your own OCD, and maybe you have, I'm just assuming, but as you learn more about your own OCD and how it relates to you, why you behave the way you do, maybe you can explain it to them, or a doctor can explain it to them. They say, won't talk to my shrink. Got it. Um, but there's lots of different approaches, and I always open up my email at the end of the live stream. If you all want to email me, I'm happy to continue the conversation and maybe come up with some ways to talk to family and things like that that perhaps will be beneficial. But I'm definitely sorry for your pain, D, and all of you that have family or friends that don't get it, or that stigmatize you or alienate you. It's the last thing you need when you have OCD. So I'm sorry for that. Okay. So, Joe, I see your questions. I'm still going to keep going, but I'll get back to you if I can for sure. But definitely keep asking them, and I'll also give you my email as well. I see Ken left. Hi, Ken. Hey, Leanne. Good to see you. Um, all right. Where was I? I saw a quick question. Arabelle asks at 7:35 p.m. Does OCD get worse over time without treatment? So the short answer is yes, it does. OCD is a malignant disorder and many times becomes worse without treatment. I'm not going to sit here and say that it always does. Um, I've known people, or at least that during puberty or different stages of their life may have grown out of it in some way, but I also don't know those people well enough to know if that's in fact happened. That's what they've stated. In general, over time, OCD gets worse and makes your world smaller and smaller, especially as you get older over time and your responsibilities increase and your world gets smaller. So the short answer is yes. For most folks, it is the case. The good news is that OCD is very treatable and very effectively treated. And so hopefully that doesn't have to be the case. I know that accessing treatment is hard and difficult and expensive. And that's why we're on here doing what we do and talking and, providing resources and having these conversations. Hopefully till we get to a point where that's not the case. I can tell you in my own situation that as I got older without the proper treatment, my OCD became significantly worse. As a kid, it was bad, but I could function. In high school, I dropped out of 3 different high schools before I kind of found found the place where I felt most comfortable. It was kind of more about like distracting me enough or exciting me enough to engage in things that are meaningful to me, but still constantly fighting and battling the OCD. There were definitely different seasons for my OCD. It would wax and wane at different times depending on what was going on. Although I think all the times I was engaging in some sort of like intense compulsion. But I definitely look back at my teens and 20s and go, well, there were some times where I was really functional and sometimes where I wasn't functional at all. But even in those really functional times, I was still obsessing and compulsing a considerable amount. And then obviously when I hit my, well, not obviously, but when I hit my early 30s as well, where just my world came crashing down and I was completely unable to function. So the short answer is yes. But if you're here, hopefully, you'll start getting information that's helpful, and that won't be the case. But it's a great question. And, if anything, it's a motivator to get better. And you're welcome, Patricia. You don't have to thank me for answering your question. That's what we're here for sure. Kayla, good to see you. Have you seen new videos article of the guy with OCD in Argentina who underwent some sort of neuromodular implant surgery? He has to wear a vest and you can see the wire in his neck. No, it freaked me out. I don't know if I believe it is a valid for OCD. The guy never really received ERP, but they deemed him as treatment resistant. I feel bad for him. I feel like he has been mutilated. Yeah. Okay. I haven't heard of that. And I haven't seen that. We have some amazing researchers and doctors that are looking for biological treatments for OCD, deep brain stimulation. Dr. Wayne Goodman out of Baylor College of Medicine is doing a lot of work with that. And there's a lot of other modalities of treatment. I know nothing about that, so I won't comment on that. It's all, I really struggle with the term treatment resistant. I really do. Because, and I've spoken to this before, it's not us that's treatment resistant. It's the research and the treatment that hasn't met us where we need, right? So we are not failing them, science is failing us. And I quote that from a scientist who gave me that information. Actually made me feel quite good about that, because I always kind of pooped on myself for failing therapy or failing this, when in reality, we all have our own circumstances. So, ERP is really effective for a large percentage of the population, but that doesn't mean it works for everybody. It doesn't mean that everybody's in a place where they can properly engage ERP. It doesn't mean that um, sorry, got distracted. Let me turn off my text. It doesn't mean that there aren't other modalities of treatment that would be just as effective or be a great adjunct to treatment, acceptance commitment therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy or, you know, um, whatever treatment. I know ACT was very crucial in my own recovery. And there was a time in my own treatment when they were discussing surgeries, brain surgeries for me. That one I've never heard of, and I've heard of most of them because although US based, so that doesn't mean anything. It very well could, but I would imagine it's experimental, and who knows. And it is sad because I truly believe that people could get better with therapy, and at least and combination of therapy and medications if necessary. And so yeah, I haven't heard of it. If you want to email me the link, Kayla, I'll definitely check it out and look into it. But as of right now, yeah, I haven't heard anything about it. And I think it's important to note that, like, science will catch up, and lots of fresh eyes are on OCD. Lots of people are paying attention to it. Drugs are being researched. New drugs, I should say, are being researched. New modalities of treatment are being researched. New biological interventions are being researched. And I think we need to have as many tools at our disposal as possible. That's the reality, right? I don't think any one person is treatment resistant. I think that we just need enough options to be able to treat people where they are and how they're struggling with OCD. So, yeah, it sounds a little disconcerting, Kayla, what you've seen. But so, yeah, feel free to email me that information. But I've never heard of it. I don't know anything about that. And it does sound sad. So, thank you for sharing, though. Leanne, how could you forget? What the heck? I'm just kidding. I'm glad you're here now. That's all that matters. Rose at 7:41 p.m. says, yes, when I came out about my OCD and needing residential treatment at Rogers, my aunt suggested I was being narcissistic. It took me almost a decade to realize she was confused by the nature of anxiety, because anxiety has urgency, which could be interpreted as me, me, me. I'm just going to continue Rose's thought real quick. Also, advocating is not normalized in my family, which I didn't realize. I flew across the country to get help for OCD, and I wanted my family to know because it was a big deal. My cousin went to rehab. The family all knew and wanted to be involved. So there's a double standard there as well for substance abuse versus something they maybe don't believe in. Now I've come out about my dad's abuse, so there's an active desire to not see me as a good person. And the subject is an OCD trigger, so it's been a real stressor. Well, thank you for sharing all that, Rose. I really appreciate you. One of the things that's beautiful about this live stream is A, knowing you're not alone, B, what you're experiencing, other people are experiencing too. So you saw words in there like narcissism and things like that, which I know some of you were also experiencing. And also, yes, the as you put it, the double standard. People can relate to addiction. It's a disease too. Some in rehab, and it's okay, to talk about that. But OCD is so misunderstood, and it's really crappy. And it sounds like you may have some some trauma there too, Rose. And I'm sorry for that. And hopefully you can. I am glad you went to Rogers, and hopefully that was helpful. And hopefully you're able to get some treatment for your trauma as well. I can only speak for myself. And I think that, we as individuals with OCD are some of the most kind, loving, creative, smart, intelligent people that I've ever come in contact with. I don't know um, many people that are as caring and loving as we are. And I mean, that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? I mean, it's a good thing for sure, but it comes with a cost. We want to be with our families. We want our families to understand. We want to support our families and have them support us. Who doesn't want that, right? But I think we feel it deeper. I think we feel it a little bit more intensely. And so then the question becomes, when do we let go of this idea that I want my parents, my family, my friends to understand what I'm going through? I want them to recognize that what I'm experiencing is not me or disorder. I mean, not me or a decision. It's a disorder and a disease. Um, and it's interesting because in my own recovery, I had to let go of my parents, and my parents had to let go of me in order for me to get better. It wasn't a similar situation that they didn't understand. They really had to just stop reassuring and enabling and indulging my OCD. And what it felt like to me, the way I perceived it, was that they no longer cared and they didn't get it. Right. So it's not as on the nose as what you're saying, but I know that when I was at residential and my parents and my treatment team had my parents cut me off, and we weren't speaking anymore, and as far as I was concerned, they didn't want anything to do with me, which was what I needed to understand at the time. um, I was very much at a loss, also because at the time, just the way I grew up with my OCD, I never detached from my parents. I never separated. So I was very, very, I lived for my parents. I just wanted to be near my mom and dad. I was scared to be away from them. It was really challenging. Right. So why do I bring this up? As much as I wanted them to get it and to understand, at this point in my life, I came to the conclusion that when I started slowly getting better, when I made some tough decisions in my own recovery, kind of alone in Boston, outside of residential, which I got kicked out of. Sorry for another time if you're new. Um, at the end of the day, it was my life, and I had a choice how to live it. And while certain things would have been nice, if I was going to choose to live my life, then I had to choose to live my life and do what was best for me. And if that included not having a relationship with my parents, then oh man, did that hurt. And that was painful. And while I wanted their love, while I wanted their understanding, I no longer needed it. And I think that's the big differentiator between um, wanting something and needing something. I felt like I needed to be near them. I needed their love and attention in order to function. What I learned when I got better was that that's ideal. I mean, in terms of wanting a relationship, but I didn't need it. I didn't need it. If I didn't have them in my life, I would survive. I would be okay, and I would figure it out, right? And so, while that's not exactly your situation, in that my parents helped me get treatment, they were supportive. I did reach a point where I had to learn at a certain point, it didn't matter whether they understood it or not. Um, and again, this also very much depends on your circumstances. If you're a minor, if you live with your family, obviously the stressors are totally different. And I'm not saying that what I'm saying is will resonate with everybody. What I am getting at, though, is this need and desire for your family or certain people to understand exactly what you're going through. And I was very much that person, right? And so, up to a certain point, it's important, but then you have to ask yourself, at the end of the day, you can't control anything but your own actions, your own feelings. I mean, your own thoughts, your own actions, your own focus, your own behavior. And so, we have to decide what is the life we want to live, and live it for ourselves. And ideally, and also recognize that we would love that with our family, we would love that with our friends, whoever is not understanding, and the long-term goals, maybe we'll get that. But sometimes by taking a step back, they'll also come to you. But that getting clarity around wanting and needing really was helpful for me, and to separate from my family. um, And so again, not the exact same situation, but that really helped. I used to say, my big fear was something was going to happen to my mom and I wouldn't be there and I couldn't live without her. Um, you know, and the way I feel about that now is, my God, I wouldn't want anything to happen to my mom. That she's one of my closest friends, and I love her, and she is my rock in so many ways. Um, but I don't need her, right? And God forbid if something happened, I would be devastated, but I would survive. I would live, and it would be hard and painful, but I would live through it. And it's the ability to, because of the ability to sort of weed out that need from want that has also allowed me to create new relationships in my life, right? Because you're making room for other things. We're taking the focus away from the people that are turning their back and putting focus on into people that may want to be with you and care and understand. And so, you're creating your own family and your own friends and your own support system. And the hope is that one day the individuals that are our blood family or whoever will come around. But yeah, I think that differentiating between that want and that need was really important in my in my life. And yeah, Rose, for sure. I mean, I think we always want to believe there's hope, and we should always hope. I think we should always hope and always hold on to hope. That is such a huge part of the OCD journey and getting better. And so I think we can also always hold on to hope, but at the same time move forward while hoping. So that's my spiel. Real quick, ACT. Joe asked, what is ACT? So ACT stands for Acceptance Commitment Therapy. It's another exposure-based treatment. And it's many times used in conjunction with ERP, exposure and response prevention. So ACT is very much about it's easier for me to say, and if Amanda has the time, but if not, you can. My mom just said, "Oh man, all true." She knows, she went through it. There's some really good town halls on ACT, multiple series that talk about what it is, how it works. But essentially, it's all about living toward your values and coexisting with the thoughts and the discomfort and moving toward your values anyway. And so that's it in a nutshell, is this idea of coexistence, right? So essentially, medicine was all about getting rid of things, right? We got to make you better. We got to get rid of, um, and that's kind of the way psychology looked at things, right? We got to get rid of the thoughts. We're going to make you feel better. And ACT and ERP, to a certain extent, sort of proposed, okay, well, instead of trying to get rid of, what if we simply tried to coexist with what we're feeling, with what we're thinking? Because getting rid of seems to only be making things louder and worse. So it kind of took a different approach. Started in the 1970s, really had this new wave intervention with OCD in the early 2000s, and now is very much in the skills and tools of almost every clinician that I know. And for me, I know, I'll have to check out the ACT Town Hall for sure. I think they're in the playlist, but I think we did like a 3-part series on ACT, and ACT for me was very much a game changer. I had a lot of trouble engaging in ERP. ACT really helped me create a new relationship with my thoughts, which then put ERP into focus for me, and then I could engage in ERP in a meaningful way that really made a difference. But I think you can benefit from ACT, and you don't need OCD to benefit from ACT. It's a wonderful therapy modality, and so is ERP for that matter. So I was just looking for any last words, closing in on time. Yes, Kayla, great. At 7:56 p.m., we'll read this. This topic of family not accepting is very important, but not discussed much. You're absolutely right. In fact, I can't think of. Would you and I absolutely be open to making this? In fact, Amanda, if we wouldn't mind just making a note of that, I can bring it up at the next scheduling. I think it's a great conversation. You're absolutely right. I've never heard it talked about. I've never heard it as a primary subject or a topic, at least personally. So I love that suggestion. That's fantastic. So absolutely. And yes, DBT is also wonderful. Dialectical behavioral therapy, mindfulness, emotional regulation, all these things. And we have had town halls as well where we've talked about all the other modalities of treatment and how they interrelate and how can be used in with OCD treatment and exposure response prevention and all these other things. So, so with that, thank you all for joining. This was awesome. I appreciate your conversation, your support, and everyone supporting one another. I hope you found this helpful and supportive. Just real quick, we'll go through some tomorrow. Well, first of all, thank you to the IOCDF and Amanda behind the scenes. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern is a lunch and learn with Dr. Liz and Chris. It's got a special focus on eating disorders. So if you have questions or want to know more about eating disorders, how it relates to OCD, you won't want to miss that. And then, of course, registration for the online hoarding disorder conference is still open. That will be held March 4th and 5th. So it's coming up. You can register today. Finally, you can see you can view the entire schedule for all live streams at iocdf.org/peace of mind. Also, please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to the IOC on Facebook, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, all the cool places. So you get notified when we go live. You can join us. And as always, you can always visit the IOCDF.org website for lots and lots and lots of resources and videos and content, and if you're looking for providers and so forth. Finally, I always like to give out my email address. I'm the only one that checks this, so please feel free to email me with additional questions, comments. You can email me at justethan@iocdf.org. And hit me up. So with all of that, thank you so much for joining me. Have a beautiful night. Stay vigilant, feel the feels, don't let OCD off the hook, and we'll see you 2 weeks from tonight. Have a good night. Bye.